So if we can kind of spread the awareness that no one knows what they're doing and you just have to get started, and you're most likely going to do as well as anyone else because we're all learning. I think there is this barrier to...
Yeah, there is. We're not allowed to dabble in this space. We're not allowed to experiment. We're not allowed to learn.
You're meant to know what you're doing before you get started, which is not how anyone learns anything.
Also, the existing offerings in the New Zealand marketplace weren't set up for dabbling.
No.
One of the common things we learned when we were initially interviewing people is they've structured their investing lives around the constraints of the industry. And so the minimums is a big one, and the fees were another big one, and clunky user experience. So it wasn't easy to engage with their portfolio, or it isn't easy as it should be. That's one of them. The second thing was the sign-up process. I mean, we heard stories of people trying to sign up and had to get on a phone to do it. I mean, that's unacceptable in today's digital age. And then the final thing were the fees. And so what people do here is they amass amounts of money. Again, these are these motivated group that we were initially targeting. They amass, let's say, $1,000 to $4,000. When they get that amount of money, then they invest it, and then they go do their research and pick. And that's absurd to be constrained by minimums and fees that is dictating your investing lives.
The existing system
crazy.
Tells them how to behave rather than them as an investor.
Because I suppose, I mean, these products they're not mortgages, they're not insurance, they're not KiwiSaver, they're not the traditional revenue buckets of these incumbents. So they've been largely ignored. So I think that's where fintech has attacked this this group of really smart, technologically savvy people who want to solve everyday problems that aren't being solved because they're not highly lucrative for a traditional corporate. So let's come in, let's attack around the edges. That's what's so exciting about fintech, is that they're finally starting to solve problems for the masses. And I think investing is a common one. And we've seen some really exciting movements in the past year in New Zealand, which is fantastic. And it's, again, largely ignored because they're probably not highly lucrative. They're just a lead-in to cross-sell other products. And again, to dictate your investing behavior based on that is ridiculous.
And one of the things that we removed from the forms that were initially sent to us of the questions we needed to ask was gender. Gender is something that is asked on every form to sign up to things. For a lot of people, male and female is not the right answer. And I think there's so many questions in those forms that are designed around information gathering for a company rather than around making it easy
or even a legal requirement when it's not.
It's not a legal requirement. And lowering the barrier to saying, we literally only ask the questions we need to ask and we explain why we need to ask them, versus the first time I started investing, when I signed up to an ANZ brokerage account, it was terrifying. I felt like I was probably going to break the law because they were asking me all these questions that I didn't really even know the answer to for myself. And it was a lot of paper, and it felt so serious, and it felt so like it was just for experts, and I didn't belong there. And I think that was once again, you don't even need to put money in a hatch, but just experiment with the idea of signing up to something and realizing that there is actually options out there that don't give you that huge barrier to just getting started.
And it's cool to see that there is this trend towards starting with the customer first.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Yeah. Start with them first. What do they want? And design it all around them rather than, like you said before, there's this pipeline and we're just shoveling stuff through it and marketing's doing their thing. But
that's disruption, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it starts at the edges, and it will just I think there is a saying that says disruption starts slowly then abruptly. And that's exactly, we're seeing that overseas. If you're to look for TransferWise, I mean, wow, imagine that remittance, sending money overseas, and someone can actually come in and do it easily and delightfully. And, who's going to do that? Everyone.
And imagine being able to travel without having to pay massive fees to get American dollars to go over to America.
Which now is TransferWise.
That's ridiculous.
Revolut.
When you think about it now, seeing these options coming through, you think, how have we for so many years expected that to go over and have a holiday in Fiji, you're paying some company hundreds of dollars just to transfer your money?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But
we put up with it for so long.
And we didn't question it. And now it's starting to, which is sort of going back to, do you think it's your career led here well, is we're perfectly placed now. We're on the brink of this whole new world of electric cars, cannabis industry, investing. There's so many things that are leaping forward at the moment that I think it's really exciting to see.
The fees. Explain to our listeners how it works. So I set up a Hatch account and I want to put in $500 and buy some Apple shares.
Yep. So the way we've done it is, and this can change in a marketplace environment. You can start to look to potentially subscription, but again, we'll be very guided by our customers, and we only want to take money where we provide value. But to start with this first partner, it's revenue share. So we have a real philosophy of transparency. So on our FAQs Help Center website, we lay everything out. And if there's something you don't know that we haven't answered, we'll happily throw that up there, because we absolutely, particularly in this industry, value transparency with our customers, and so with our investors. And so we're transparent about the partners that we partner with, how we make our money, and what the fees are. So you would put your $500 in, we will take your money, give it to our foreign exchange partner, who then moves it into the US for you and into US dollars. And so
all that's invisible to you, by the way. You just transfer it into a New Zealand bank account.
And you'll get it in next day, as long as you get it in before noon. Before noon. And they currently, it's 50 basis points to do that. And which is quite cheap. That's much cheaper than an average bank transfer at the moment. And so we just share the profits with, share a little bit of that margin with our foreign exchange partner. You'll wake up the next day and you'll have US dollars in your Hatch account. And then what you do is you can shop and you can invest. Now, the cool thing with Hatch is you can fractionally invest, which is you can buy fractions of whole shares. And that's important in the US market, because there's companies that have share prices that are pretty expensive. And so Amazon, last time I checked, was just around $1,900, but even Nike at over $300. If you're looking to build a portfolio with your $500, you might not want a share in Nike to take up $300 of that $500. So what you can do is say, look, I'm going to invest in 10 companies with this $500. You might not do 10, but a fraction of a share costs $3. And so if you're just buying a portion of that, it's $3 USD. That takes right away at the time of buying. You just get the $3 taken off, and we share that margin with our broker partner in the US.
Right.
If you want to buy a
Your
whole
broker
share,
partner is
Drive Wealth.
Drive Wealth, yeah.
Yeah, they're a fantastic company outside of New York, so they're in New Jersey, and they recognize this fractional investing, and that people actually want to build these diversified portfolios and want the ability to do that. So they've delivered on that, which is really cool.
Yeah. So you're taking, so there's a bit of a margin or a bit of profit sharing on the foreign exchange bit. There's a bit of profit sharing happening on the brokerage.
Fee.
That's it.
We're talking about small numbers here.
It's small numbers,
massive,
yeah.
But you're not getting paid a commission
No.
from
There's
Drive
no
Wealth.
commissions. There's no hidden fees. That's it.
There's
It's
two
just
places
those
we
two.
take money.
It's two
That's
places
it.
we take money, and I think we can keep it lean because we've heard people, how do you make money? How are you doing this? We keep it lean. We're going to always have a very small team, and we leverage technology where we can.
And it's not a complicated model. It's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. A lot of people probably don't realize that some of the fee-free options in New Zealand to invest in overseas markets, specifically with, say, ETFs, and they're getting paid a commission from doing that.
Yeah, well,
How
I mean,
open
and
is
this
that?
industry is notorious for hidden fees, but also really poor user experience and complexities. If they're not looking to help solve your problems with tax or advice, I mean, eventually we hope to do those things really well. It ends up being scary, and you get yourself into some weird situations.
Right.
And the platforms are a lot of the platforms are actually pretty ugly, which again puts people off, because your investing in shares experience should be very much like your online shopping experience.
Correct.
You should be able to enter
the
a
same
store.
shopping high.
Yeah, you should be able to search for what you
Yeah.
want. You should be able to filter things, which we've done,
Yeah.
and then eventually we want to build all sorts of cool
Yeah.
overlays where you might just say, look, I want to look at female-led companies.
Yeah.
I want to look at environmentally friendly companies, and you can start to have these really cool overlays and this fantastic, delightful shopping experience. And so that's a goal of ours, to create right from the ground up. And so I think finance should be like your everyday digital experience that you've come to
Absolutely.
expect. That
And
you've
I-
come to expect.
And I've always come from a philosophy, coming from an experience in making people feel smart using things rather than making people feel dumb. If you have a really ugly interface, 99% of people will blame themselves for not being able to use it. If you use jargon, rather than blaming you for not being able to explain it in simple terms, which as an expert you should be able to do, people blame themselves for not being able to understand the jargon. So by default, and I don't know why, the financial industry has deliberately or not deliberately been trying to put people off, and our goal is very much to, you shouldn't have to know the jargon to get involved in it, and a lot of financial technology platforms are starting to and have that same attitude. So it is so much more accessible now than it was 5-10 years ago when I started.
It certainly takes a pragmatic lawyer though, doesn't it? Because all that stuff, it's a highly regulated, risk-averse industry because they get in trouble when things go wrong.
And that's for real reasons.
Absolutely.
Like we've been talking recently.
Yeah,
we have this amazing AML, and AML is anti-money laundering. It's all the stuff, the painful stuff about your income and how often you expect to trade. And for me, that's always been slightly frustrating to sort of have this without really understanding why. And we've been having these amazing conversations. And our AML officer was previously a police officer, and just talking about the actual impacts of what happens if we don't have these things in place and where some of that money goes. So when you kind of understand why we have anti-money laundering, and it involves drug pushers, human traffickers, that sort of stuff, you sort of start to go, actually, I'm kind of happy to tell you how much income I expect to earn in a year, because I don't really want to be part of that problem. I want to be part of the solution. So,
and just do it in a friendly way then, as soon it is.
Okay, makes sense. Who are you disrupting?
Maybe ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting thing coming into a wealth company. It was this idea: if you're not comfortable with disrupting yourself, then someone else is going to do it. So this is what corporates are looking at: is we should probably have these innovation labs or accelerators, or should we look at an acquisition strategy to buy a startup that's looking to disrupt us? But what we found is actually we complement Kiwi Wealth. We're actually servicing a group of people who didn't have access to advice. They didn't have access to these fantastic funds on the platform. So we're not disrupting Kiwi Wealth, I would say, but who are we disrupting? We're disrupting those incumbents that are simply just ignoring their investors, I think. Again,
even our launch has led to more conversations about, why do I pay so much to buy investments on the NZX, and why do I? So it's sort of, I think we're disrupting the idea of the fee models and the options available. The idea that in New Zealand you only have 3 options. We're disrupting that. We're disrupting the idea of how you access financial and investment options. The idea that you can have a fully fledged brokerage account, access to cool investments without having to fill out forms and that sort of stuff. So there's a huge amount of disruption.
That's disruption.
Ideally, if they move from nothing to us, that's
awesome.
Great too.
That's great too.
And that's probably a big pond that you're fishing in already.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in that space where they're not being served by anybody. I don't want to know them because they don't have enough to deal with.
And that's fair. There's different levels, right?
Yeah. And that's the way it is, and that's not. There's some reasons why it is the way it is like that, but it doesn't mean that there's not an awesome opportunity for somebody to solve that problem.
Absolutely. I mean, like, ideally for me, we're disrupting the property market, right? We're disrupting the idea that housing is an investment, not a home. And I think if we even have somewhat of an impact on the idea that you might have more options out there than buying another rental property,
which isn't great for New Zealand.
It's not great for New Zealand. New Zealanders should be investing in growing companies, not building houses to rent out for a profit.
And we work with a lot of young people who can't even get into property, and that's
so
obscene.
that change might just play right into your where you see things going. It might not be instant, but I think you're probably going to see a lot of people, instead of investing in the next investment property.
Absolutely. That's exactly what they're looking to do, because they were viewing property as investment, but also a home. And so how can we make sure their money is working for them while they work their way through this
and while we are talking a lot about the US share markets, which is very, very cool, we're building a platform. So if you do have multiple investment properties and you are looking for different options, we're looking for different options too. So we're looking to see what is the other things that New Zealanders want access to. We're smart people here. Going back to the myths, we're smarter than we realise. And I think even the number of people who came to us with a number of things that they'd been looking for overseas, or who said, I have been waiting for someone to launch this for years, just goes to show there's a whole ton of world-class investment options out there that New Zealanders want access to. So we are more than excited about trying to add more products onto the platform to solve a wide variety of problems.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, thank you for making it easy.
We tried.
That was your job, wasn't it?
How
that's
can you
pretty cool.
tell?
Now, is there anything else that you want to say? Anything else that you want to impart to our listener, those who are trying to develop wealth? What would you say to them right now?
Don't constrain yourself to New Zealand options. I think there is a world of investment opportunities out there. So really look around you, look at the brands that you use every day, look at the news that you see every day. You know, media, largely, we're getting international global news. The world is actually very small. So be bold in your investment strategies as well, even if you're just starting to learn. So I'd say don't constrain yourself to the options that are available here just because they're available here, and also just get started. So if that's with a small amount of money, just start learning.
Just start.
Just start.
Don't underestimate your own abilities or intelligence.
Absolutely.
And realize that while you may not have read 1,000 investment books and done 500 trades on the share market, you are perfectly positioned with the knowledge you already have to make your first investment.
Yeah, that's really good. Awesome. That's really fun. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate that conversation. It was really enlightening, and I personally got a lot out of that. So thank you very much.
Awesome.
Really
Thanks,
good.
Thanks for that.
Thanks, guys.